Hello and welcome to another episode from the Water's Edge. Now apologies this evening if we're looking a bit windswept, a bit red-faced and a bit dishevelled, as me and Steve have actually been out and about since 4 AM this morning. We've actually been down in Bradwell in Essex fishing with a guy on his charter boat called Phil White. He runs the boat the Chinook 2 and we've been out there today and we have enjoyed some unbelievable smoothhound action. Now there's a link in this top corner here if you want to check the video out. But what we're up to now is on the way heading back up to Norfolk, we decided to stop at a place called Sizewell. You'll see the power station behind me in the background there. And the species we're targeting today, or tonight, is the sole. Now, the sole are a little flatfish that inhabit a lot of sort of Suffolk beaches around this time of year. They're only in relatively small fish, they don't grow huge. So today I've left all my Frio pennels at home, you know, all my crab baits, and we have got some real sort of simple rigs, baits and tactics. What I'll do is I've got one rod out at the moment. I'm going to be fishing 2 rods. I'll just talk to you a little bit about the rig. The rig we're using for the sole is just a standard, as you'll see there, standard 2-hook flapper rig, I guess. It's about a couple of foot in length, something like that, and we've got 2 little snoods. We've got one at the top and then we have got another one at the bottom. We've got a little 4-ounce impact lead. Now the reason for that is that even though there's a relatively big tide tonight, we're not fishing very far out. Sole can be caught 20 to 40 yards from the shore, you know. They're in the shallower water, so we don't need a heavy weight because we're not casting miles, and 2, we're missing out on the main pull of the tide because we are fishing so close. Now you'll probably notice here on the snoods I've actually adapted them a little bit, because as they're a flatfish they're obviously a bottom feeder. So all I've done, different people, you know, will perhaps tell you different, but I just like to add a little drilled bullet about, I don't know, 2-3 inches from the hook. And this sort of acts in 2 things, I guess, but the main reason and the first reason I use it is because it's gonna be pinning down your bait. It's going to be pinning down this hook length, and it's going to be making sure everything is flush to the bottom. It also is just locked in place with a couple of little sliding float stops like you'd use for coarse fishing, and it also acts as a great bait stop. So you can thread your little section of worm up there or whatever bait you're using, and then they just simply can slide it down to sort of stop it, I guess. But I've fished it about there just to make sure, for me it's just about pinning this hook link down and making sure your bait is on the bottom, because that's where the sole and the other flatfish we're targeting are going to be. Another thing is, you'll notice in general I tend to be a bit of an animal, you know, with my sort of beach and sea fishing. It's all about the Frio hooks, big baits and pennels, but today I've actually gone down to a little size 4 fine wire long shank, and that's just going to take a little piece of worm. The reason for the small hook is, to say, because they're relatively small fish, and one of the defining features are they have a tiny little mouth. Now hopefully tonight, if we're able to pick one up on camera, we'll be able to show you it and talk to you about it a little bit more detail. But they're pretty much the main talking points with the rig. Very simple, let's say, apart from them little extra added drilled bullets on there. Another thing, some people may even, I guess you could put one at the top of your rig body if you wanted, or even just, you know, on your shock leader, just to keep it pinned down. It's the most important thing. Now, just moving on to the baits. The baits we've got with us, which were kindly given to us by Phil on his charter boat today, is the ragworm. I don't think we've used ragworm before when we've been filming, because normally I like the lugworm, but I've heard sort of on the grapevine and, you know, through previous experience that ragworm is a fantastic bait for sole. They absolutely love it. It's a bit more of a sort of summer bait, I guess, as well, so that's probably the contributing factor as to why it catches so many fish. And you can see we've got some real sort of snakes in here tonight. We won't be using pull baits, and I'll actually bait up with a little bit now. Obviously with small hooks, small baits, and generally small fish, we're only going to be taking a little section of worm. So what we'll do is we'll just break him off there, pop him back in. So that's the little section of worm. And one thing to mention for anyone who hasn't used ragworm, I don't know if we'll be able to pick it up on camera, but they actually have a pair of pincers at their head end. They're nothing to worry about. They will give you a sort of a nasty little nip, I guess, if they get you. But if you just nip them tightly by the head and just thread them on, and what you're looking for, or how I like to fish, is a tiny little bit of worm segment, something like that, and then you can see the drilled bullet is just going to pin that down, and that's going to sit nice and flush on the bottom. So that's the first hook. I'll just grab the second. Now a lot of people, when you can use 2 hook rigs, you can use 3 hook rigs if you want, but I just got some 2 hook rigs made up, so that's the only reason I'm using it, to be honest. Another popular rig to use is the old wire booms, but I didn't have any of them, so I've just gone with the standard flapper rig. A little bit, we'll just tip in with the last little bit of tail. There you go, and that's another nice little bait. So I'll just show you the finished article, and hopefully the rig and the baits that are going to do the damage and put a sole on camera. Now they're ready to go. So what I'm doing is just wipe my hands. It's the trouble with the ragworm, they're kept in like a muddy peat, and that sticks to you, and it end up covering all your rods and your reels. So just I always like to have a bucket of water handy and my towel. But what we'll do is we'll drop this one out. I'm going to sort of be varying distances a little bit, but in general it's going to be sort of quite close quarters fishing. So drop this one out there now, and I think sit back and just chill out for 5 minutes, because say we've been on the go since, well, the early hours. So we're going to have a few hours at it, probably fish an hour or so in the darkness, and we'll see what happens, and hopefully we might just be able to winkle one out. Well, I'll just put a new set of fresh baits on the rods. I guess probably we've been fishing about, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. So I'm changing the baits pretty regular, because you're only using small pieces of worm. You want to check them every 5-10 minutes, depending on how they're lasting on the hook. If you're still coming in with a bit of bait on, obviously you can leave it, but just like to check it, because if you've got a bit of crab activity, they'll soon work it off. But I'd expect probably as we get into darkness, we will, fingers crossed, pick a fish up or two. I mean, they are predominantly a sort of nocturnal feeder. They prefer the cover of darkness, as you can imagine, venturing into the shallows to have a grub around for the food and whatnot. You'll probably see, I think there must be a bank or something out here, because you got the waves breaking probably 30-40 yards out, and it's like it quite predominantly runs along all the way along the bit of beach in front of us. And probably what you'll find is the profile of the beach, perhaps at low water, you'll have a little sort of gully close in, then you'll have the sandbank, and then you'll have you know, slightly deeper water the other side. So it's a good idea that, you know, when you're targeting sole and sort of any flatfish really, is to try and explore the water a little bit. I've obviously using 2 rods, so, you know, drop one at 20 yards and drop the other one at 40 yards. You know, perhaps put one out at 60 yards. Just keep changing it up really. And if you land on, you know, a fish or two, then, you know, keep trying to hit that similar sort of area, because it may be that there's a slightly deeper gully or a little, you know, perfect patch of sand full of shrimp and stuff like that they're feeding on. So that's a little bit of a tip, I guess, really. But other than that, it is a bit of a waiting game. They're feeding on the smell of this ragworm, and hopefully they're going to home in and find it. Now obviously I said the key thing is to keep your baits pinned to the bottom. So you'll probably notice tonight I've got the rod tips really nice and low. You know, none of this up. There's not a great deal of wind, so you can have them low, and if there is any wind, it's going to pretty much blow straight over the top. I've also got the lines by no means slack, but not bowstring tight, because obviously you can imagine is when your line enter the water, you don't want it like that, and if you're really tight to it from a high rod tip, you can imagine your snoods are coming off like that. They may not be on the bottom. So by just fishing that little bit slack, you're getting more of an angle like that with your tips low, and they're going to be sitting nicely on the bottom. So that's pretty much it now. That's all we can do, and just cross our fingers really, and hopefully that when darkness falls, probably an hour or so into it, I guess. I think high water's around midnight, so we'll probably fish up until about then, see what happened, and yeah, hopefully we'll report back for something worthwhile. But for now, I'm just going to watch the rod tips in anticipation, and yeah, see what happens. Well, we just had a right little tap, and I think there might be a fish on here. In fact, I think there definitely is a fish on here. Now, what it is, I don't know, but it was I let the bite develop, which is one of the most important things. They've only got small mouths, and obviously you've also got the 2 hooks on there, so you know there's every chance of a double hook up, and you want to make sure, you know, they've got the bait in the mouth. You don't want to be striking it out and pulling the bait out, but it's only right in close, not very far out at all. But I'm just going to walk down a little bit, and we'll see if we can see what he is. Well, we actually have the target species. What I'll do is we'll take him up there, unhook him, and we'll have a little look at him. But you can see him there. Not a bad fish at all. But the main thing is, it is exactly what we're fishing for. So we'll say take him up there. We'll have a bit of a closer look at him. Well, here he is. Just get that hook out. Right, there he is, a lovely little fish. They can be an absolute nightmare to get hold of, but see if we can give you a little look at him. I mean, not a massive fish, but you know, not the smallest fish in the world either. As I said, they don't go massive. They will get, you know, quite a bit bigger than this, but it's not a bad start at all. You see what he's saying about the tiny little features. It's got this really strange sort of tiny little mouth right on the side of the head, you know, pair of beady eyes which are absolutely minuscule. He's definitely not a sight feeder, you know. They're going to be coming along in the darkness, smelling out that food, the little shrimps and the worms. You can obviously see they've got 2 sides. You've obviously got this sandy coloured top, which is, you know, the camouflage in the sand, and then they've got this sort of brilliant white underbody. But real slippery little characters too. I think they are actually called slips as a nickname, but you'll see them there. Tiny little tail as well, but you can imagine that whole body gets moving, and that's what give you the famous sort of rattle, you know. And for their size, they do really hang on. But he's a lovely little fish. So what we'll do is we'll get him slipped back. We'll just one last little look at him. I say not the biggest fish in the world, but I'm made up, I guess, really, because it's nice that we've come out, we've targeted a specific fish, and after a really sort of long day, that's a great reward. So we'll slip him back, and hopefully we'll catch him when he's twice the size. Well, I love it when a plan comes together. Just as I was doing that, you know, little talking bit about how I expected him to come in during darkness, I guess we're getting to that sort of time now. You probably just about picked me up without the camera light on, but it's not going to be long now, and we'll crack the tip lights out, get the camera light on there, and get the headlamp out. You know, and it's a good sign, I guess. You know, that's really encouraging. And hopefully a sign of a few more fish to come. It'd be nice to get one a little bit bigger than that, but I'm just chuffed to bits to come down and get one, because, you know, so often here from the water's edge we sort of set our stall out and we have all the best intentions, and it doesn't always go to plan. But it looks like today has been an absolute blinder of a day, and I've loved every minute of it. But there's still time for it to get better yet. I'm going to probably cut the little ragworm baits on, if you'll just pick them up there. I'm just going to drop this one back in the same sort of place, because it may be that, you know, there's a couple more fish there. If there's a little sort of pocket of sand which is full of food, or if there's a slightly deeper gully or whatever. But we'll try again. We'll drop it out, and then we'll catch up with you when we're fully illuminated. Well, since we had that last fish, darkness has really descended now, and it's all been very quiet, to be honest with you, which is a little bit of a surprise, because we had that fairly early on, and I honestly thought we may have picked up another one or two, but it's just been dead. We've had the odd little rattle and stuff like that, but I think that's either really small fish or crabs, because most of the time I'm bringing the baits in reasonably quickly, you know, after casting out, and there's not a lot of bait on at all. So I don't know, really. I don't know. I think we're probably going to give it another couple of chucks, perhaps another half hour or something like that, because I think we are well and truly done in now. I've had a really long day today, a really long, enjoyable day, but we're on the old energy drinks, and we're flagging a little bit, but hopefully might be able to winkle out one more before it's time to call it a night. But we just thought we'd check back in and let you know how we're getting on. So yeah, it's all a little bit quiet, but we shall see. Another couple of chucks, something like that, and we'll see what happens. Well, we're back to the car now. Unfortunately, we didn't produce any more fish, but it's a little short video done, and you know, even though it hasn't been the most fish filled, I hope perhaps that, you know, you might find a few of the tips in there useful. It's the sort of time of year now where you can get out and target these flatfish, and especially the sole. You know, it is a real summer species, and you know, they are, you get the right night and the right tides, there are a few of them to be caught. But so I do hope you've enjoyed it. Once again, thanks for watching, be lucky, and we'll see you again on the next one. Yeah, all spam down.